You can't even have children. What use is a wife like that to me? I'm demanding a property division of $50,000. David never ceases to look down on me, even when pressing for divorce, without even bothering to understand my feelings. I smirked inwardly at his attitude and handed him the divorce papers I had already filled out. "Now, are you prepared? Quite attentive for you." He snatched the divorce papers and began filling out his section with delight. The moment to end my marriage to this man has finally arrived. This realization excited me. Furthermore, I had a secret from David. How will he react once this secret comes to light? Most likely, he'll be shocked and thrown into chaos. The thought of his face at that moment brought a secret smile to my face. My name is Kelsey Saunders. I'm 36 years old. I work part-time. I live with my husband, David, and we don't have children. David used to be my boss at the company I worked for. Initially, he came off as terse and standoffish, making it difficult to approach him. However, working closely together revealed he was quite approachable and even made for an effective boss. Though we started as mere colleagues, spending more time together made us see each other differently. About a year after meeting David, we started dating. While we dated, David always prioritized me. He took me wherever I wanted to go, treated me to delicious meals, and consistently made our time together enjoyable. Moreover, David never forgot anniversaries and would always surprise me with bouquets or little unexpected moments. I was always deeply grateful to him. I really appreciate everything. Thank you always. Seeing you happy is my greatest joy. Thank you for being with me. To many, such words might seem cheesy, but I was head over heels for David. His words always made me genuinely happy. A few years later, we decided to get married. Our colleagues congratulated us, and we were on top of the world. I dreamily imagined a calm, joyous household with David. But after our wedding, I got to see David's true colors and began to regret my decision. In essence, David's temperament worsened after our marriage, making my life increasingly challenging. He became temperamental and imposed unreasonable demands on me. Why isn't dinner ready when your husband is home? You work part-time, right? Why can't you manage the house? I'm the one earning here. Don't you appreciate that? After getting married, I left my job and started a part-time job at a nearby supermarket. David wanted me to be a homemaker, but I felt mentally constrained staying home all the time. With David's understanding, I started working part-time. I'm sorry. I thought you said you'd be late today. I didn't say that, okay? Don't make assumptions. Whatever. Just prepare dinner now. Seeing David's agitation, I hurriedly began preparing dinner. But I hadn't done the grocery shopping, so I had to make do with what was in the fridge. As expected, David blew up. Hey, are you kidding me? This is what you serve me? Who do you think is earning here? In the early days of our marriage, I noticed a change in David's attitude. I dismissed it as minor quirks at first. However, as time went on, I began to see a disturbing trend in his behavior. Now and then, I try to understand his true feelings, raising questions during casual conversations. But David always avoided or evaded them, never really putting my anxieties to rest. Perhaps my constant probing aggravated things, making him more distant. After numerous such exchanges, his anger intensified, and now he won't even listen to me. At first, I had no idea why his attitude changed so dramatically. But as I pondered the reasons, I began to suspect that he might be troubled by a specific issue. I suspect it has to do with a medical condition of mine. In truth, we had a bridal checkup before getting married. We wanted children, but tragically, I was diagnosed with infertility. That revelation was profoundly shocking to me. I'm so sorry, David. You wanted kids. I'm sorry I'm infertile. Choosing my words carefully, I conveyed my deep regret to him. I also told him that he might find happiness with someone else if he wished. I thought that if that would make him happy, it would be for the best. Back then, David always talked about the kind of future he envisioned if we had kids. The places he'd take them, the things he'd teach them, how he'd love to play catch if it was a boy. We often talked about building a happy family together. Knowing I crushed those dreams of his made me feel so guilty and ashamed. However, we had to accept the reality. I had to give up my dream of having a child with the man I love. I'm so sorry. Please don't worry about me. I'll respect whatever decision you make. I won't say a thing. I was bracing myself for the worst, but David's response caught me off guard. It's okay. I don't want to leave you. I'd hate that. Why? It's obvious, isn't it? I married you because I love you. Sure, I wanted kids, and we had dreams, but you being by my side was what mattered most. Even if we can't have children, I value being with you more than anything. That's why I want to be with you always. Hearing those words, I was overwhelmed with relief and burst into tears. Nothing could be more comforting than knowing I could still be with David. Are you sure? Won't you regret it? Mixed with anxiety and joy, I questioned his words. I'm sure. It's not a lie. I won't regret it. His kind voice and those words brought even more tears. But at the same time, considering the current situation, I worried that he might not truly want to be with me. If he still felt the same way as before, he wouldn't act so harshly, I thought. What should I do? I remembered the sweet and kind words David used to tell me before we were married. But were they all lies? I don't know the real reason behind David's anger, and I have no way to confirm if my infertility is the reason. It's hard to have a proper conversation with David, and every day was a struggle. However, one day, I finally got to hear from David why he had been so harsh. That day, as usual, we were arguing. Look, dishes are piling up again. Why aren't you washing them? The dirt will harden, and there's dust on the TV. Your home so cleaned properly. I frowned slightly and retorted. It's just a glass I used a while ago. If you're so concerned about the TV dust, you could just clean it yourself. It was just one glass, and I had just cleaned the TV. It wasn't that dirty. What more does he want from me? Usually, I'd reluctantly follow his demands, but this time I couldn't help but respond. Then, watching David, he suddenly threw his bag on the floor. I was taken aback by what he said next. What's with that tone? This is why you can't have kids. Speak up when you can have kids. Well, you probably can't. What are you saying? David's words filled me with a mix of confusion and sorrow that was hard to articulate. There's no connection between my attitude and my infertility. While I knew this, I was both surprised and deeply hurt by David's words. What do you mean? That has nothing to do with this. David's statement, combined with my disbelief, made the situation even more complicated. You just need to listen to what I say. It's all your fault if you don't. Stop making me angry and don't talk back. Got it? David berated me, spitting with anger. I was so taken aback by his aggression that I couldn't muster a response, shrinking in fear. David, seemingly amused by my state, headed to his bedroom. It struck me that we started sleeping in separate rooms just a few months after our wedding. Every time I reflected on David's words, I felt engulfed in anxiety and sadness, thinking that perhaps he didn't need me. This situation marked the start of his relentless blame that everything was due to my infertility. You say you're busy because of your part-time job, but you hardly make any money. On top of that, you're infertile. You can't even manage household chores properly. What does that have to do with anything? And before we got married, you said you accepted it. My arguments were always met with David's sneers and disregard. Accepted? When did I say that? From the beginning. I always said I wanted kids, to play catch together. You said being with me was what mattered most. I never said that. Stop making things up. David never listened to me. I began to see that this was David's true nature. I regretted not seeing through him when we were dating. I couldn't believe this man was my husband. It felt like my mental state could crumble at any moment. Though I considered divorce many times, one issue held me back. I didn't have enough money to support myself. Though I worked part-time, it was tough to get by on my income alone. In reality, I was heavily reliant on David's earnings. David often reminded me, you can't even survive on your own. Without me, you're nothing. David knew that without him, it would be challenging for me to make ends meet. That's why, no matter how much he insulted me, he believed I wouldn't leave. Our relationship was so strained it barely resembled a marriage. David continued to contribute to household expenses, but he increasingly worked late and on weekends. At first, I thought it was just a busy period at work. However, the reality seemed different. Checking his pay slips, there was no overtime or weekend work recorded, and the deposited amount matched the pay slip. I first thought it might be a mistake, but both the pay slip and the deposited amount being incorrect seemed unlikely. If David's claims of overtime and weekend work were false, I grew anxious, wondering what he was doing instead. After much thought, I suspected David might be having an affair. However, I had no evidence, and I lacked the energy to investigate. Thus, I silently endured our cold relationship. Despite my compliance, David continued to berate me. I've always thought this, but you're terrible at cooking. It's honestly awful. I'm fed up with these terrible meals. In the beginning, you used to enjoy my cooking. I don't recall saying that. Is this just your imagination? Do you have any evidence? Always making things up in your favor. Stupid. That's why you can't have kids. Every hurtful comment from David wounded my spirit. Being constantly looked down upon, mocked, and belittled with references to my infertility made me hate myself. Moreover, David's behavior made me stay home more. Seeing families with children became painful, so I began to avoid going out. My life revolved only around my part-time job and shopping. I rarely saw daylight, and daily stress took its toll. My skin became pale, I looked older, and I felt like a shadow of my former cheerful self. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror recently? You look terrible. Seriously, I can't introduce you as my wife. David's words grew even more malicious, driving me further into despair. However, one day, an unexpected incident brought significant change to our married life. It was a sleepless night, hoping to fall asleep. I sat in the living room sipping warm cocoa and watching television. The clock had already struck 1 a.m. Normally I would be asleep by then, but I was indulging in some rare late-night TV time. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the front door unlocking. I assumed David had returned. Looking towards the entrance, I saw slightly inebriated David. He seemed in high spirits as if something had pleased him. But as soon as he spotted me, his cheerful expression vanished. "Why are you still awake at this hour?" "Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I was watching TV." "Dick, you're so annoying. Just go to bed." With those words, he quickly headed to the bathroom. While his comment upset me, something else caught my attention. As he passed by, I noticed a fragrance and unmistakably a scent of cosmetics. This was the moment my suspicions about his infidelity solidified. Frustrated by his blatant disregard for hiding his actions, I became determined to find undeniable proof of his affair. I realized he was taking me for a fool. Reflecting on our past, David had often looked at me with contempt. His affairs, the verbal abuse, all of it had hurt me deeply. I decided to make David regret all he had done to me and then divorce him. I was willing to do whatever it took to exact my revenge. All I wanted was to get away from David. From that day on, I meticulously searched every corner of our home. I sneaked into David's room, scrutinizing his closet and bookshelves. I also found an old smartphone he used and checked its data. However, there wasn't a shred of evidence supporting his infidelity. Just as I was about to give up, a suit pocket in the closet caught my eye. There might be some receipt or something inside. As I felt the pockets of several suits, I touched something solid. Nervously, I pulled it out. It was a high-end lipstick, clearly not something David would own. The likelihood of it ending up in his pocket by accident was slim. It was most likely left by the woman he was seeing. Finally, I had a piece of evidence. Though I had combed through almost everything, gathering more proof on my own felt challenging. I contemplated consulting a detective agency, but I couldn't afford it. After much thought, I decided to confide in a close friend for my part-time job. I had always been hesitant to share my issues with David, especially when my colleagues joyfully discussed their family life. I didn't want to dampen the mood, but I chose to confide in my closest colleague, Tammy. "Tammy, I have something challenging to talk about. Can you listen?" "What happened, Kelsey?" The day after finding the lipstick, I opened up to Tammy about David. Tammy always radiated happiness when talking about her family. "Actually, it's about my husband. I've had suspicions for a while now, and I think he might be having an affair." "What? Is he really? Do you have any proof?" I divulged everything to Tammy, from the emotional abuse to our current situation. While she had seen a photo of David, I had never shared details about our relationship. I was anxious about her reaction. After listening, Tammy pondered for a moment and slowly began speaking. "Look, Kelsey, please don't be mad, okay? First, I've withheld something from you. I wasn't sure whether to tell you, but I have a secret concerning you." "What's with the formality? What secret?" "A secret." I was engulfed in a mix of astonishment and suspicion. Could it be that Tammy was David's mistress? As I braced myself, Tammy revealed something beyond my wildest imagination. Tammy said, "The thing is, Kelsey, I saw David. Your husband, right? I saw David walking hand in hand with another woman recently. I took a picture just in case because I wasn't sure about the state of your relationship with him, and how he behaves at home. I was afraid to tell you because I didn't want to ruin your relationship if things were good between you two. Tammy showed me a picture on her smartphone, and it clearly showed David with a woman I didn't recognize. That's David. Yeah, I thought so. Do you know this woman? The atmosphere grew tense. This was more than enough evidence of his infidelity. Also, I took a few more pictures. After I saw them, I got curious and followed them. I even got a picture of them entering a hotel. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, especially since you're going through such a hard time. It's okay, Tammy. I hadn't confided in anyone. It's not your fault. I'm grateful. Thank you for telling me. It's confirmed now. Tammy handed over the photos, which Kelsey examined multiple times. Every time she looked, it was undeniably David in those photos. Thank you for the photos. If you need any help or advice in the future, just let me know. I'm here for you. I was overwhelmed with gratitude that I had such a reliable friend nearby. I thanked Tammy again, left work, and began my journey home. On my way, I stopped by the city office and picked up divorce papers. Now, all that remained was to confront David with the divorce papers and get his signature. However, I was uncertain about the right timing. Although I was determined to divorce, my fear of David's reaction remained. I didn't know how he would react to the divorce news. While contemplating and holding the divorce papers, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed my father's name. It was rare for him to call, so I answered immediately. Hello, it's me. What's up? It's been a while, Kelsey. How have you been? I have something to discuss. What is it? It's unusual for you to call. Sorry to surprise you like this. The thing is, I've decided to hand over my assets to you. What are you talking about? Why, all of a sudden, my parents used to run a successful company and had accumulated a significant amount of wealth. They had mentioned in the past that the assets would eventually be mine. I want to settle things while I'm still healthy. That's unexpected. After consulting experts, they estimated the assets to be around $11 million. What? $11 million? It was an unbelievable sum. I knew the business was doing well, but I had never imagined such a vast amount. Are you seriously going to give all of that to me? Of course. I can't take it to my grave. When can you come over? We need to start the paperwork. As I looked at my calendar, an idea struck me. I should inherit my parents' assets after the divorce. That way, the property division would be smooth. If I inherited before the divorce, David might claim a share of the assets as communal property. I had never discussed my parents' wealth or business with David, so the divorce proceedings might conclude quickly. I confided in my father about my decision to divorce David. I see. You're parting ways with David. Well, if that's your decision, I won't interfere. Always remember, we're on your side. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. Our home is always open to you. Thank you, Dad. With my father's support, I decided to tell David today that I want a divorce. No matter what happens, I have reliable allies by my side. Everything will be okay. Several hours had passed since my call with my father, and it was already past 11 p.m. David returned home, humming cheerfully and in a notably good mood as he opened the living room door. Yo, you're back early. Welcome home. It's not midnight yet. Without a word, David abruptly threw his bag and coat onto the sofa. I've been thinking. I want a divorce. Divorce? Oh, to my surprise, David was the one to bring up the subject. Honestly, Why should I have a wife who can't even have kids? So useless. I'm demanding a property division of $50,000. I've often heard the term useless from him, but demanding a property division was unforeseen. If anything, I should be the one demanding it. Taken aback by David's words, my feelings towards him quickly cooled. I handed him the filled-out divorce papers from the table. Fine, here are the divorce papers. I've already filled out my part. Del, you're all prepared, aren't you? Well organized. Grinning widely, David quickly filled in his part of the papers. All right, finally free from you. So happy. Is that so? David flashed a rare smile. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers and immediately headed to my parents' home. Though there was some distance between my parents' place and my part-time job, it was manageable. Wrapped in a feeling of safety, I decided to stay with my parents for a while. The reunion with my parents was heartwarming, and their familiar warmth comforted me. Are you all right? You look exhausted and pale. Do I? A lot has happened. I understand. Take it easy. You don't need to overwork yourself. Thank you, Mom. The time spent at my parents' place felt special. Touched by my parents' kindness, I decided to rest for a while. 2 days later, when I returned from my part-time job and checked my smartphone, I noticed a slew of missed calls. Checking the call history, there were over 30 missed calls. All of them were from David. With almost a call every 5 minutes, it felt disturbing. After all the insults he hurled at me over the years, I couldn't understand why he'd call so frequently. Perhaps he wanted to continue berating me over the phone even after our breakup. Resolving to ignore him and about to put away my smartphone, another call from David came through. Hello, what is it? Kelsey, please, can you come back home? Why? Having issues with your mistress? What? How did you know? David seemed to think I hadn't discovered his affair yet. His reaction made it hard for me to suppress my laughter. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? If you knew, then what do you want to do? She's so incompetent. Doesn't do housework, can't cook. And ever since we started living together, she's been so selfish. What should I do? That's not my problem. What are you even talking about? It's creepy. Without apologizing for his affair, David begged me to return. We've been together for so many years. Shouldn't a couple support each other during times like this? Excuse me. We're not a couple anymore. We've divorced. And after all the times you belittled me, especially about infertility, now you're turning the tables because your mistress isn't what you expected? What a joke. Over the phone, I unleashed all the emotions I had bottled up inside. Even though you said you wanted to be with me, you get angry just because we can't have children? What's that about? Explain why you cheated and belittled me all this time. Come on, answer me. Well, that's what happened. Lost for words. Where's that domineering attitude now? Well, the thing is, you have nothing to say. Truly a pathetic man. I was a fool not to see this before our marriage. Oh, and I'll be seeking property division later on. Remember that? Mentioning property division, David's demeanor changed instantly. Property division? There's no reason for you to claim it. If you let people speak, they get carried away. You can't even live on your own, can you? Without my support and money, you can't do anything. Can't live on my own? No money. Can't live without you. David's reaction to money may indicate that he is in a tight financial spot. I have assets and I'm not struggling financially at the moment. Considering we're already divorced, maybe I should spill it all. Thinking about this, I decided to inform David of the reality. Listen, David, you don't need to worry about me not being able to live on my own or not having money. I've inherited assets from my parents, approximately $11 million. So you can rest assured. What? $11 million? I thought about telling you before the divorce. But I was wary of the property division with you. That's why, after discussing it with my parents, I decided to inherit it after the divorce. What the hell? Hold on. I've never heard about these assets before. Of course not. I never told you. Even over the phone, I could tell David was dumbfounded by the revelation. Wait, I didn't know. He kept repeating himself in a near incoherent manner. Should we wrap this up? We're divorced, meaning we don't share anything anymore. You don't need to be concerned about my money or my life. Just wait for a call from my attorney. Hey, wait. David might have wanted to say something else, but I had nothing more to share. I ended the call and set my phone aside. Afterward, I instructed my lawyer to claim property division from David. Though I lacked evidence of his verbal abuse, I managed to receive a significant amount for the infidelity. I wasn't privy to David's current situation, but I heard he appeared quite worn out when visiting the attorney's office. Perhaps he's struggling, finding it difficult to make ends meet and pay the claimed amount. Well, I didn't wish to pry into David's feelings. Recalling his mistreatment made me hope he would struggle a bit. I quit my part-time job and started working as a temp at a company within commuting distance from my parents' home. I changed jobs because David knew where I used to work, and I wasn't sure what he might do. When I resigned, my friend Tammy told me, if you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be there for you, which was incredibly encouraging. Despite the years of being controlled and manipulated by David, I've decided to live my life on my terms. Firstly, I plan to excel at my new job, save money, and take my family and Tammy on a wonderful trip. Each day, as I think about these enjoyable prospects, I give my all to my work.
My name is Ellie. Even though it's only been a week since I lost my father, my husband Fred approached me with a worried look, bringing up the topic of inheritance. Ellie, we need to discuss the inheritance in more detail. We might face difficulties later on if we don't. Come on, Fred. My dad just passed away. Can't we talk about this later? Fred looked at me apologetically, searching for the right words. That's when my sister Kate chimed in. Ellie, the inheritance process can be time-consuming. It's better to get it sorted sooner to avoid future issues. You think so too, sis? But I just want to reminisce about Dad for a bit longer. I understand how you feel. But the inheritance is a separate issue. Getting the complicated process out of the way might give us time to reflect on memories with Dad. Indeed, inheritance disputes are common. However, in our family's case, our mother passed away a long time ago, and only Kate and I are eligible for the inheritance. So I argued, why the rush? But if it's just the two of us, can't we take our time to discuss? Kate took a deep breath. Actually, I was surprised to find out that Dad wrote a will. I mean, it's just the two of us inheriting. But this envelope, it feels like it contains his heartfelt wishes. Wait, Dad wrote a will? Kate nodded. Yes, he wrote it while he was in the hospital. He entrusted it to me, she said, handing me a pristine white envelope. I gazed at the envelope for a while. Why did he have to think of this, Dad? Kate gently took my hand, He had a long battle with illness. He probably wanted to ensure he had no regrets, thinking about our future. I vividly reminded of the day a year ago when our father was suddenly diagnosed with cancer. By the time it was discovered, treatment was challenging, and Dad knew his time was limited. Since then, he had been doing everything he could for us. When I was lost in memories, Fred tapped my shoulder. "First, let's open the will and understand Dad's wishes." I nodded and turned to Kate. "Yeah, sis, go ahead and open it." However, Kate hesitated for a moment, looking somewhat troubled. "What's wrong, sis? Is there something you're worried about?" Kate pondered before speaking. "Wait, are we sure we should just open the will like this? Maybe we should consult a professional first?" In this unfamiliar situation, she looked more serious than usual. After some thought, I felt she might be right. Fred suggested, "Hey, I know a lawyer, a guy named Johnson. Want to consult him?" A few hours later, Mr. Johnson arrived at our house. He greeted us with a smile. "Can I take a look at the will?" Kate handed over the will with a hint of nervousness. "It's precious, please handle it with care." Johnson carefully broke the seal, read it, and remarked, "Everything seems in order. No issues here." "So, what does it say?" Fred eagerly asked. "All the inheritance is to go to the younger daughter's husband, Fred." At that moment, Kate's face was a mix of shock and confusion. "Wait. Why everything to Fred? Isn't that strange?" Johnson replied with a concerned look. "It clearly states so here. This is your father's wish. We can't do anything about it." Kate hastily snatched the will from Johnson, seemingly verifying his words. The shock made her sit down on the floor. Seeing Kate like that, Fred looked puzzled. "So, does this mean I get all of Dad's inheritance?" Something felt off. Unconvinced, I gently took the will from Kate and read it over and over again. No matter how many times I read it, Fred's name was clearly written. What was even more unbelievable was that it said only I should renounce my inheritance. It was written that Kate could claim her reserved portion of the inheritance. I thought to myself, is this for real? Seeing me in such a state, Fred asked, "Ellie, are you okay? Is something bothering you?" Feeling overwhelmed, I looked at him and asked, "Why has it come to this?" "Fred, what does this mean?" He took a moment and then said, "I don't know. But if your father-in-law decided it, we have to accept it. We are a married couple, we'll figure it out." Trying to comfort me. Yet, I wondered, is that really the right thing? "Ellie, we should prepare the inheritance renunciation documents according to your father-in-law's will." Why do we need inheritance renunciation documents? Well, in simple terms, it's a way to express the intention of not accepting the inheritance. It's especially useful when there's a lot of debt or complicated repayment situations. Fred, gesturing with his hands, explained in a light tone, sometimes inheritances might hide more debts than expected. If you inherit that, it could turn into unexpected burdens. That's where inheritance renunciation comes in. But I've never heard of my father having such huge debts. Fred smiled. Perhaps it's because he was a businessman. Maybe it's about company matters, like loans. He might have been worried about that. Loans, like when a company borrows money? Yes, exactly. It's the money needed to run a company. And it needs to be repaid. Your father-in-law probably didn't want to burden you with that. Suddenly, I remembered the reasons my father worked late and the serious expressions he occasionally wore. Maybe they were all because he wanted to protect the family. I see. That's why he suggested I renounce my inheritance. I felt like I understood my father's feelings a little better. Thank you, Fred, I thought to myself. Ellie, let's ask Mr. Johnson to clarify the inheritance renunciation. Yeah, that's best. Thank you. This became the trigger for me to start the inheritance renunciation process. My part went smoothly, but Kate's situation wasn't that easy. After several discussions between the two, Fred finally compromised a bit and increased Kate's share, and the procedure was finally settled. Time flew by, and it's been half a year since my father passed away. It's amazing how quickly time flies. The inheritance he left behind was a staggering $5 million. I knew he was a businessman, but I had no idea he had that much money. I don't know much about it, and thinking won't get me any answers. So, I decided to gratefully accept it. However, one day after a tiring day at work, I came home to an eerily empty house. What happened? Walking around the house, I noticed that some furniture and items were missing. Could it be a burglary? Wait, seriously? This is bad. I hurriedly called Fred. Hello, Ellie? What's wrong? You sound panicked. Fred, I came home and was shocked. Some of the furniture is gone. Oh, is that all? Wait, so you're saying this isn't a burglary? Yeah, it's not a burglary. I felt a strange relief in Fred's voice. I waited for him to explain, a mix of surprise and confusion. So, what happened? Why is everything? Actually, I took some things. I moved them. Why? Why would you take things without telling me? Feeling a mess of anger and surprise, I confronted Fred, who nonchalantly replied, I moved. To a new place. A new place? Why didn't you tell me? There were reasons. I thought maybe we needed some time apart. I've been thinking about divorce. What? Divorce? Why would you? Suddenly hit with this news, I was at a loss for words. I thought we got along well. Fred had always supported me. Why would he suddenly bring up divorce? Yeah, I guess I surprised you, huh? Surprised? It's more than that. Explain yourself. Well, there's something I've been struggling with. I've been seeing another woman for some time, and I'm thinking of starting a new life with her. For a moment, I couldn't understand what he was saying. He had never mentioned anything like this before. I then remembered the recent settlement of my father's estate. Could this confession at such a time have been planned from the start? A hint of suspicion crossed my mind. Wait, did you do something with my father's will? I did ask him, but I don't think I told him not to give it to you. I suddenly remembered Fred's unapologetic smile. With that smile, I felt as if I could imagine the cunning way he influenced my father. Why are you doing this? We've been together for so long. Say whatever you want. But look at what's on the table. Looking as directed, I saw the divorce papers. Why would you do this? I won't divorce you. The only words of resistance I could muster, I couldn't think of anything else. Then, Fred began to indirectly expose my secret. Ellie, even if you refuse the divorce, you can't go back to that house. And, by the way, your father-in-law mentioned that you got a new apartment, is that true? My heart raced, unsure of how to respond. About that. Fred chuckled. It's okay. There's no need to hide. You bought it with your own money, and I don't intend to take it away. In truth, this was an event that occurred just before my father passed away. Amidst my confusion about my father's sudden hospitalization, he unexpectedly called me to his hospital room and made a proposal. My father, with a serious look, said, "Ellie, I have a favor to ask. Can you buy a new apartment?" Why the sudden request? After a moment of thought, my father replied, "I need a place to keep something very important. Can you afford a reasonably priced apartment?" Confused, I considered my life with Fred and suggested, "Why not bring whatever it is to where Fred and I currently live?" My father nodded and said, "That's a good idea, but it's a rental." He continued, "Just do as I say. If you do, I'll give you some money." In the end, I bought an apartment near a station in a convenient location to fulfill my father's wish. He then gave me an amount that exceeded the cost as a token of gratitude. I hadn't told Kate or Fred about this. I properly paid the gift tax, and my father had emphasized keeping it a secret. The fact that Fred knew was an unexpected twist. Considering that Fred now knew, there seemed to be no point in continuing to hide it. "So, you're saying you want me to live in that apartment by myself?" "Yes. It's probably too big and lonely for just one person, right?" "I suppose." Hearing my response, Fred's voice sounded relieved. "Then, send divorce papers properly. After that, you can come." "Come to where?" "To your parents' house." "Your home." A question arose in my mind, and I whispered to Fred, "When you say home, are you with my sister?" Fred took his time before replying, "Correct." Shocked and taken aback, my voice trembled. "Why? Why with my sister?" I realized how foolish my question had been. Fred had an affair and said he wanted a divorce. And he chose my sister as his new life partner. The answer was already clear. You don't get it? Then let me make it clear. I've been dating your sister. That's all there is to it. That's cruel. Exactly. So accept it already. That was why the atmosphere was awkward over the inheritance. Was that all part of your plan too? Well, yeah. Regardless of the circumstances, the inheritance was always meant to end up with us. Considering all this, Kate and Fred had been conspiring from the very beginning. That's why my sister accepted such a small share of the inheritance. And once things were settled with me, they'd start their new life together. That way, the inheritance from my husband would go to my sister. Realizing all this weighed heavily on my heart. I'd been led by my husband's words and had given up the inheritance I was supposed to receive. And to think that even my own sister, whom I trusted wholeheartedly, was behind all this. Tears welled up in my eyes. Ignoring my emotions, I heard my husband's voice on the other end of the phone. You get it, right? This isn't the time to cry. Just send the divorce papers before you come to see me. Enough. I get it. As long as you understand. I'll pay spousal support as you say, so just let it go. His voice had a gleeful nuance to it. The sound lingered in my ears even after I hung up. I don't even know what to do anymore. In my confusion, I went to the city court and filled out the divorce papers. Then, I headed to my parents' home. As I approached the house, I heard Kate and Fred's cheerful conversation. I mean, I feel a bit bad for her, but she should have noticed, right? Yeah. I always greeted you with a smile when you came over, but inside I was holding back laughter. Now, we can finally live freely together. Well, yeah, but it all depends on whether she signs or not. Of course she will. Betrayed by those she trusted and not getting the inheritance. Hearing their conversation filled my heart with pain and anger. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm down. You'll see. I'll never forgive you. But for now, I wanted to end my involvement with these two as soon as possible. With that strong desire, I entered the house. I submitted the divorce papers. This is what you two wanted, right? All right, this will do. Ellie, this is goodbye. Hold on, Fred. You haven't forgotten about the property division, have you? How much are you thinking? $30,000 in total. That's reasonable, isn't it? If I asked for more, it might lead to court battles or prolonged disputes. I don't want the hassle, and more importantly, I don't want to be involved with Fred or my sister any longer. So I mentioned the standard amount. What? $30,000? Isn't that a bit much? Fred looked surprised and then discontent. If that's not acceptable, we can go to court. Ugh, the court would be a hassle. Fine. I'll pay. While glaring at a resigned-looking Fred, I suggested, let's discuss the details with the lawyers. By lawyer, do you mean Johnson? I'm not relying on your lawyer friend to manage everything. I plan to consult someone I know. Oh, I see. You have such a reliable lawyer as an acquaintance. His name is Tony, and he's the lawyer who also helped my dad. Tony really came to my aid when I purchased an apartment for my father. He sincerely helped with the finances and the procedures. It seemed he had known my dad for a long time. I trusted Tony and felt that I could safely leave everything in his hands. After returning home, I took a deep breath and called Tony. Tony, I've gotten into a bit of a mess. And decided to tell him everything. It's okay, Ellie. Don't worry. Leave everything to me from now on. Thank you. That alone makes me feel a little better. You're moving to that new apartment, right? Yes, the one my dad talked about before. It seems like a calm place. That's nice. But does Fred know the location of that apartment? He seemed to know about the purchase, but then it might be best not to tell him the location. And for a while, let's avoid direct contact with Fred and communicate through me. Oh, okay. But why? Well, to avoid any troubles. Just relax and leave it to me. Tony's voice always had warmth, and I finally felt a sense of relief. After hanging up the phone, I took another deep breath to calm myself. My time in this room was running short. Let's start a new life, I told myself. Looking around the room, I saw that my husband's belongings were already packed, while mine were scattered everywhere. I won't stay in this room much longer. I quickly packed my essential belongings into a suitcase. Taking a break, I picked up the keys to my new apartment. This new place was arranged for me by my father. It's a place filled with my father's love. When I opened the door to the apartment, I was greeted by the fresh scent of a new home. In a corner, a cardboard box was placed, filled with belongings my father cherished. Oh, I still have some of Dad's things left at the family home. I need to pick them up. Over the next few days, I took time off work and traveled between my family home and my new apartment, arranging my father's belongings and preparing for my new life. In the midst of adjusting to this new routine, I received a call from Tony. Ellie, how's life in your new home? Thank you, Tony. I'm still adjusting, but every day feels refreshing and fun. Is there something you wanted to discuss? The divorce details have finally been settled. The compensation has been properly paid. I'm thinking of transferring it to your account, is that okay? Oh, everything's done? That's a relief. Can you come to the office then? I'd like to meet face to face to confirm a few things. Oh, right. There's also the matter of the payment, right? Understood. A few days later, I arrived at Tony's law office as scheduled. We discussed the details of the divorce, the procedures, and the compensation. After wrapping up the discussion, by the way, it seems your sister has chosen to marry Fred. Is that so? I know it must have been tough, but if anything comes up in the future, please rely on me. And since this is personal advice, of course, there's no charge. With a gentle smile, he reassured me. As I was about to leave the office, expressing my gratitude, the door suddenly slammed open, revealing an angry Fred shouting, "Is the lawyer named Tony here? Oh, Ellie. I need to talk to you." Fred's large steps resounded as he walked toward me. His momentum was intimidating, making me tense up. However, in a split second, Tony stood protectively in front of me. "Fred, we're inside an office. Can we talk calmly?" Tony then led Fred to a seating area with a sofa and had him sit down. "Fred, what brings you here today?" "Well, I actually want the compensation back." "Is the compensation for Ellie?" Fred, with his face red with anger, said, "Exactly. That's it. I'm having some trouble." Still, Tony calmly continued to reassure him. The matter of compensation was supposed to be agreed upon by both of us. "Did you have unexpected expenses or something?" "Yes, I suddenly need some money. If you could return it, it would really help." Both Tony and I were a little surprised by Fred's sudden proposal. With a playful tone, Tony said, "Didn't you get a $5 million inheritance, Fred?" Fred, with a somewhat embarrassed but proud smile, responded, "Well, yes, but..." Then, Fred looked at me and said, "Actually, Ellie, I have a proposal for you. How about we split the inheritance again?" "Why are you bringing this up now?" Fred, with a grimace, replied, "I've been feeling guilty that you didn't get anything. Don't you think it would be fair for you to receive something too? So, in exchange, you want the compensation returned?" Fred nodded and said, "Yes, I think that's fair." "What do you think?" Tony interjected, "That's a bit complicated. Ellie has already renounced the inheritance. It's not possible." Fred, irritated by this, said, "But I want to share with her." "You have no right to interfere." Just then, the office door opened with a bang, and Kate rushed in, panting and sweating. She seemed to be in a hurry. Kate, with anger in her eyes, said to me, "Ellie, what's the meaning of this? You're not enjoying putting me in such a difficult situation, are you? What happened? Why are you so upset all of a sudden? You knew that our father was a guarantor for someone's debt, didn't you?" "Guarantor? What does that mean?" Kate, wide-eyed, exclaimed, "You're hiding it, aren't you? Our father became a guarantor for someone, and that person seems to have run away. Now, the debt is being claimed from our father. Apparently, our father had become a guarantor for someone, who then disappeared, defaulting on the repayment. As a result, a payment notice was sent to our father. Moreover, our father is no longer alive. As a result, the debt is being claimed from the heirs, Fred and Kate." Tony, with a gentle smile, said, "Well, it seems the two of you will have to repay it." Kate, looking flustered, replied, "We hardly have any money left. Once you've received the inheritance, you have obligations related to it. However, Ellie has already chosen to renounce it, so she has no responsibility." "Can I renounce the inheritance now?" "I'm sorry, Kate. Once you've touched the inheritance, it's difficult to renounce it. And the period to make that choice has already passed. Kate, tapping the table with her nails in frustration, said loudly, "What should I do now?" In the midst of this, Fred calmly spoke to me. "It seems our father-in-law borrowed money from various places, not just banks but also friends and acquaintances. Because of that, the money I received ran out quickly. What about the compensation you gave me at that time?" Fred, with a wry smile, continued, "Well, new debts kept emerging. I thought perhaps our father was optimistic that if he could repay the loans related to his business, he could enjoy a more relaxed life in his later years. However, according to Fred, debts and obligations that our father had hidden came to light. The money he had was depleted because of these debts, which is why he wanted to get the compensation back from me." After explaining everything, Fred begged desperately, "I'm truly sorry, but can you return the money? Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to borrow from some dangerous people. You remember how much you hurt me and suddenly ended our relationship, right?" Fred was left speechless and downcast by my cold behavior. Next to him, his sister smugly stared at me. "You wouldn't think of taking care of your divorced husband, would you? But you can't abandon a kind sister like me, right? After stealing someone's husband, you have the nerve to say that. Well, he came to me on his own and wooed me. But you two started a new life together, right? Well, we had some money." Fed up, I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "He told me you two were dating from the beginning, weren't you?" Kate looked surprised and turned to Fred. "Why did you tell her that?" Fred looked apologetic and nodded. "It's all because of what you said. Look what's happened." "I know. But, given the circumstances and feelings at that time, it couldn't be helped." A tense atmosphere began to develop between Fred and Kate. I just stared at them in disbelief, truly not knowing how to respond. Tony seemed a bit perplexed by the atmosphere as well, saying, "I'm sorry, but can you refrain from having a marital dispute here? Wait. Ellie, please help. Can you lend me some money?" Kate's desperate face and the downcast Fred behind her. They were then escorted out by Tony. I later found out that Fred and Kate had borrowed money from a shady place. If they couldn't repay it, they'd have no choice but to work on a crab fishing boat. Tony had respectfully declined their SOS on my behalf. While having tea with Tony, he kindly smiled at me and said, "I made sure to refuse them. Do you feel a bit relieved now?" After a while, I heard that Fred and Kate in fact had been put on a crab fishing boat. After a series of tumultuous events, my heart feels somewhat light now. Sure, there were many hardships and worries. But amidst all that, I found a ray of light. It's my relationship with Tony. I feel like our distance has been closing, bit by bit. Of course, Tony might just be concerned for me, but my heart is filled with a gentle warmth. I don't know where this new relationship will lead, but I cherish this feeling and want to move forward step by step.
You're not properly doing the housework or taking care of the kids, right? Let's get divorced. Oh, and don't forget the property division. Actually, I was recently involved in a traffic accident. It was 2 weeks after the accident when Jacob finally came to the hospital. Instead of showing concern, he threw unexpected words at me. At first, I was slightly happy that Jacob finally came to visit, but seeing his attitude, my disappointment grew and a deep sigh came up. To tell the truth, I've been getting tired of this relationship recently and was thinking about divorce. So when Jacob suddenly brought it up today, I was surprised, but in a way, I was grateful that the conversation proceeded smoothly without a long dispute. Let's do that. Jacob looked surprised. not expecting me to agree so quickly. Sorry, but I know exactly what you're scheming. I felt a little amusement inside and struggled to hold back my laughter. I am Mia. I'm 35 years old and currently devoted to housework and childcare. I spend my days with my husband Jacob and our adorable 7-year-old daughter, Emma. I met Jacob at a mixer when I had just started working. We got married when I was 28. We bonded over generational stories. And Jacob's passionate approach moved me. At the mixer, Jacob's handsome appearance stood out, and he was the center of attention among the women. So his serious approach was very welcome and a bit of a bragging point. While we dated, he seemed to always prioritize me in his actions. For example, he'd surprise me at a lovely restaurant on my birthday or plan trips to wonderful places on our anniversary. When he gave heartwarming letters on important occasions, I genuinely felt lucky to have someone like Jacob. So when he proposed, I immediately said yes. Being with Jacob, who loves surprises, I expected to always feel the excitement of a new romance. But an unforeseen challenge awaited. Actually, Jacob changed dramatically after marriage. Hey, Mia, why isn't dinner ready? I've been working all day and am the breadwinner of this family. Serve the meal quickly. Making me wait like this. You're failing as the support role for the breadwinner. After marriage, Jacob started emphasizing his role as the breadwinner and began to view me as the support role for the breadwinner. At first, I took it as a joke from him. During our dating period, we often joked and laughed together. I imagined a wonderful married life with nicknames for each other and forever being close. But after marriage, Jacob's attitude made me feel like a mere helper. Initially, I brushed off comments like "stop joking like that," but over time, I realized he seriously saw me only as a support role, which was confusing. After marriage, I resigned from my job, and we rallied on Jacob's income. I started fearing a confrontation with Jacob, worried he'd make financial threats. Honestly, his salary wasn't that great. When I was working, our financial situation was more stable. Jacob, after high school, went through various jobs. His curious and impulsive nature remained, often changing jobs every 1 or 2 years. This unstable career made Jacob feel insecure about his own career. And sometimes he took out his frustrations on me. I'm sorry for being late. I had something to do. You're late again. I told you to be quick. What? Jacob said that in a firm tone, immediately took out a beer from the fridge, and relaxed on the living room sofa. I've seen this many times. So I sighed softly and headed to the kitchen to start preparing dinner. Such incidents had become everyday occurrences in our home, but I still tried to live peacefully day by day. A year after our marriage, we were blessed with a baby girl named Emma. But life after her birth was like an ongoing battle. Jacob's participation in child rearing was disappointing. He hardly helped at all. Yet, when Emma wanted toys or candies, he would generously buy them for her. As a result, he became the indulgent one, while I was the stricter parent. This made Emma feel closer to Jacob, her father. Hey Emma, what do you think of Daddy? Yay, Daddy is cool and I love you. Told you. I'm a pretty amazing dad, right? Jacob looked at me smugly, clearly pleased with Emma's adorable answer. It's heartwarming to see a child adore their father so much. I smiled a little, but I also let out a soft sigh. But in reality, while Jacob spoils Emma, he has never once attended any of her school events. There's a parent-child relay race at the upcoming sports day. Why don't you join? Why do I need to do that? I'm tired from working all day. You have the time. You do it. But isn't it a great opportunity to bond? It's on Sunday, so you won't have to worry about work. We already have a strong bond. You should be more careful. Emma might not like you if you're too strict. You know, laughs. Jacob said that with a smile but with a hint of sarcasm, and then left for work. I wondered, How can someone who doesn't even show up for his daughter's sports day call himself a great dad? I deeply hope that Jacob's selfishness and harsh attitude wouldn't influence our daughter, Emma. Time passed, but Jacob left everything regarding the house and Emma to me, spending his days without lifting a finger. Emma will be in elementary school soon, but Jacob's approach to work hasn't changed. Recently, he left his factory job and seems to have entered the food service industry. My new job is in the food industry, so it looks like I'll have to work weekends. So we'll have even less time to spend as a family on weekends. Looks like it. It's work. Can't help it. Of course, I understand, but when Jacob is home, he often gives orders about housework, which is honestly stressful. Although I always do my best with the chores, having Jacob say things like, "Why isn't this place cleaned up?" or "Is dinner ready yet?" was stressful. However, I am concerned that Emma might feel lonely if Jacob is away, even on weekends. For a child, spending a relaxed holiday with the whole family is precious. By the way, let Emma know about my work situation. Of course, I'll tell her. The fact that Jacob's income supports our family is undeniable. I'm not in a position to blame him. With those feelings, I went to Emma's room. "Hey, Emma, I have some disappointing news." I looked at her, wondering if she'd be upset, but Emma's reaction was nothing like I expected. What is it?" "From now on, Daddy won't be home on his days off." Emma seemed to ponder for a moment, but then smiled. "Okay, that's fine." "Really?" Mom was a bit worried. "Yay, but recently, Daddy has been smelling a bit odd." What kind of smell?" Emma didn't reply, but instead hurried out of her room. I was left pondering her words. What did she mean by a strange smell? Lost in the daily grind of parenting and housework, I hadn't noticed minor changes. The time spent with Jacob had decreased, and I often felt distant from him as a couple. So I had been avoiding him. Maybe it's the smell of materials they use in the factory. Come to think of it, I remembered he had a distinct scent when he returned home recently. Perhaps it was from chemicals or materials at the factory. That would explain Emma's comment about the strange smell. Even though he switched from the factory to the food industry, that strange smell remained. I chuckled at Emma's innocent remark. Children's straightforwardness can surprise us, but it's also what makes them so endearing. I became more curious about Jacob's behavior on his days off. On weekends, he'd leave early in the morning. Even on weekdays, he was always away. What was he doing on his days off? One morning, without any explanation, he'd leave the house. I wasn't sure if it was for work or leisure. Driven by curiosity, I decided to ask him one day, "Hey, you've been going out a lot even on your days off recently. Where do you go?" Upon hearing my question, Jacob looked surprised. He blinked a few times, seemingly pondering how to reply. "I want to be relied upon in my new workplace, so I'm working even on my days off. That's important, but please take care of your health." Stop nagging about my work. It was hard for me to understand how Jacob could be so irritable about his job, especially when he often critiqued how I handled housework and childcare. Given his character, I found it hard to believe he'd willingly work on his days off. Having spent so long with him, I knew Jacob's work habits and attitudes. So his current behavior felt odd. Had he truly grown so passionate about his job, he'd have stuck to his previous job. Moreover, Emma's comment about the strange smell was bothering me. Was there something more behind it? Or was it just a child's imagination? I decided to delve a little deeper. Every time Jacob returned home, a distinct sweet and strong scent would tickle my nose. It couldn't be from the factory. Why hadn't I noticed this obvious change earlier? I chastised myself. Determined not to let this slide, I decided to be more observant of Jacob's actions. Whenever Jacob said he was leaving for work, he'd get up unusually early and take extra care with his appearance. On such days, his face always had a look of anticipation. Driven by curiosity, I searched every nook and cranny of Jacob's room. Then I noticed a candy tin in his closet. Inside, I found numerous envelopes. What on earth? I couldn't help but voice my shock aloud. The sender's name on the letters was Meg. The letters had clearly been delivered by mail. The postmarks varied in date. The oldest was from 2 months ago, while the most recent was just yesterday. As I read further, the content made me think of youthful love letters. Jacob, we had our differences before, but now I truly love you. I miss the days when we spent time together so happily. There were even straightforward expressions of love, like Jacob. Thank you for always making time enjoyable. I love you. At first, I thought maybe Jacob's past girlfriends wanted to reminisce about some memories and sent a letter just to convey her feelings. However, a certain line in the letter caught my attention. It's been great seeing you again recently. Looking forward to our next date. Such joy-filled words were written there. The date of the letter was just last week. It seems Jacob is currently seeing this woman named Meg. This confirms he's cheating. I saved the content of the letter as a photo on my phone. I considered taking the actual letter, but thought Jacob might notice if I did. Yet, I felt this letter alone wasn't enough proof. After much thought, I decided hiring a private investigator was the best move. To ascertain Jacob's actions, I had him followed. 3 weeks later, I received a report from the agency. I hadn't expected the results to come back so quickly and was somewhat surprised. The folder the investigator gave me contained pictures of Jacob and Meg walking hand in hand, and shots of them passionately kissing on a park bench at night. There was also an audio recording capturing them saying, "I love you." Having braced myself somewhat, the shock wasn't too great. In my heart, I murmured, "I knew it," as I accepted the evidence. Holding the divorce papers, I left the city hall. Now that I was sure of Jacob's affair with another woman, I saw no point in continuing our relationship. I decided that if anything major arose between Jacob and me, I would show him the divorce papers and force a decision. When I got home, I sat on the sofa and let out a sigh. Even though I handled things coolly, a storm raged inside my heart. Recalling my days with Jacob, I wallowed in self-loathing, wondering why I married him in the first place. I was about to start preparing dinner when my cell phone rang. "Hello, it's Mia." "Mia, can you talk now?" "Yay, what happened?" I was taken aback by my father's sudden call. It was quite rare for him to call me directly. To be honest, your mother and I had a deep discussion about our assets last night. We're thinking it might be time to pass it on to you. What? Why this all of a sudden? My father runs a business, supplying hand-picked goods from around the world to domestic clients. I'm the daughter of the company's CEO. However, I hadn't told Jacob about this. Considering Jacob's history of job hopping, I felt that talking about my family's business might hurt him. But I wondered what this sudden call from my father meant. We've grown old and are thinking of retiring soon. We did consider making you the next CEO, but didn't want to burden our only daughter. So we've decided to close down the business. I see. I felt a bit guilty for not choosing the path of succeeding the company. But my parents understood my feelings and planned my life's path accordingly. Their kindness warmed my heart. That's why we decided to pass on the assets we've accumulated to you. Right now, our total assets amount to $2 million, but $100,000 is enough for your mother and me. So we plan to inherit the remaining $19 million to you. Mia, $19 million? Really? I was shocked. I never imagined I would possess such a large sum. It's an amount that would be hard for me to earn in my lifetime. Yes, of course, there will be inheritance tax deductions. But even after that, a substantial amount should remain. With this money, you'll never have to worry about finances. Thank you, Dad, and Mom too. Truly, thank you. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I ended the call. Knowing that I'd soon have access to such a large sum, I realized I wouldn't have to worry. even if I decided to end things with Jacob. Considering Jacob's work, it would be challenging for him to acquire such an amount. Overwhelmed with emotion and relief, I zoned out for a while. When I glanced at the clock, it was already pointing to 5 in the evening. I was surprised at how quickly time had passed. I hurriedly thought of preparing dinner and headed to the kitchen, only to realize I had run out of ingredients for dinner. I decided to head to the nearby supermarket to buy ingredients. Recalling my father's words lightened my heart. Yet at the same time, I was anxious, fearing that Jacob might come home if I got back too late. With that in mind, I left the house in haste. As I was about to cross the street when the traffic light turned green, suddenly, "Car, watch out!" a scream-like shout pierced my ears. In that split second, I felt as if gravity reversed, lifting me into the air. I was slammed onto the asphalt, a severe shock echoing in my head. Unable to understand why this was happening, darkness enveloped me, and I started to lose consciousness. When I came to, an unfamiliar ceiling stretched above me. Slowly, my surroundings came into focus. I realized I was lying in a hospital bed. My parents, wearing worried expressions, and a tearful Emma stood in front of me. "Oh, Mia, I'm so glad you're awake." Mommy, Mommy." Feeling Emma's teary eyes on me, I gently stroked her head. "You were hit hard by a car, and both your legs are broken. It will take about 3 months for a full recovery." 3 months. Thinking of the long days ahead, my heart wavered with anxiety. From then on, my life revolved around a wheelchair. The nurses took excellent care of me, but the inability to walk freely was undeniably frustrating. Many friends and acquaintances came to visit and encourage me during my hospital stay. My parents seemed to have taken care of Emma. As Jacob was often away due to his busy work schedule, their presence was a significant comfort. While many friends and acquaintances worriedly came to visit, Jacob was nowhere to be seen. He might be having a great time with that woman, Meg. Then, 2 weeks later, an unexpected visitor appeared. It was Jacob. "Hey, how's it going?" Even though he clearly knew why I was in the hospital, he asked casually. I replied weakly, "I'm okay." "Man, it was tough without you at home, you know." His words seemed to undervalue all the housework I had done. I sighed lightly, hoping for a bit of concern. "It can't be helped. It was an accident." Reacting to my retort, Jacob responded dismissively, "What a mess. You're not doing the household chores and childcare right, are you? Let's get a divorce. Oh, and don't forget the property division." While I was in the hospital, Jacob made an unbelievable declaration. I was briefly relieved thinking he had come out of concern, but his true colors hadn't changed. Drawing a deep breath, I sighed again. Truth be told, I was already tired of this relationship and had considered divorce. So, when Jacob suddenly brought up the topic, I was surprised but also somewhat grateful that the conversation went smoothly. "Let's do it." Jacob, not expecting my immediate agreement, looked at me with wide eyes. "I've seen right through your schemes." I had to restrain myself from laughing. "I've already filled out the divorce papers." From a bag my mother had brought, I took out the divorce papers and handed them to Jacob. "Impressive, you came prepared. All right, I'll submit these to the city hall." Jacob quickly filled in the necessary information on the spot. "With this, we can finally be free from each other. It's a relief. I'm heading home." I wanted to reply, "Same here," but I silently watched his back as he left. After this, he would probably start new life with Meg. I don't know what kind of person Meg is, but when I think about her future living with a nitpicky man like Jacob, I can't help but feel sorry for her. I felt sorry for Emma, but my decision to divorce remained unchanged. I resolved to support and nurture Emma even more than before. Over the next month, I enjoyed peaceful and stable days. Without Jacob's constant complaints, I was able to enjoy my own time, and it felt like heaven. I've already been discharged from the hospital and continue to attend a rehabilitation facility. I've decided to stay at my parents' home until my legs fully recover. Naturally, upon hearing about my divorce, my parents felt resentment towards Jacob. Wishing to forget about Jacob as a thing of the past, my family refrained from mentioning him. Emma, too, went to school every day without showing any particular signs of missing her father. I guess Emma noticed it early on. Perhaps Emma had long realized Jacob's selfish nature and might not have even recognized him as a father on his days off. Either way, I genuinely feel that the decision to part with him was the right one. That said, one day at noon, my cell phone rang. Seeing the name Jacob on the display, I initially decided to ignore the call. But he kept calling persistently, and annoyed, I finally answered. "Why aren't you picking up, Mia? When are you coming back?" Taken aback, I reflexively responded, "What?" Given the aggressive tone, his words made no sense. "What do you mean by coming back? Didn't you marry Meg?" Upon hearing the name, he exclaimed, "How do you know about Meg? Did you think I knew nothing? I'm fully aware of your affair. That's why I'm claiming property division." "What are you talking about? I can't imagine paying both property division and child support. It's ridiculous that you, who barely did household chores, are claiming property division. You should be the one to pay for neglecting housework." I was astonished at Jacob's absurd claim. Indeed, I had initiated claims for both property division and child support from him, but he hadn't paid a dime. I knew Jacob was financially strapped, but refusing to pay, and then demanding something from me, was beyond comprehension. "I've got evidence of your affair. I've also consulted with a lawyer thoroughly, and my claims are based on that. You know that, right, Vic?" It seemed he had already seen the evidence gathered by the detective agency. Despite this, his calling me directly was shocking. I decided to respond calmly, despite my disbelief. "Honestly, I've been feeling doubts about our relationship even before your affair. You never helped with housework or childcare, always complaining. I'm not your convenient maid, but I felt relieved when you got remarried. Someone else could take care of you." "Well, Meg, she's terrible at housework. I didn't know when I married her. She confidently said, 'Leave it to me,' but her cooking's terrible. And she doesn't clean. Being with you is better. So will you marry me again? You must be worried about money, right? Emma must have liked me as her father, right?" Jacob's comment about was better made my anger surge. "What are you talking about? The affair, the divorce, and the remarriage were all your choices. If you have regrets, that's on you, and Emma doesn't think much of you. And as for the money, I've planned everything thoroughly." "You're lying. How can you, who was a housewife, have money? You can't live without my support, can you?" I hadn't initially intended to tell Jacob about the substantial inheritance from my parents, but I felt there was no point hiding it now. Actually, my parents ran a substantial business, and recently, they transferred a significant amount of assets to me, $19 million. It might be a surprising figure, so even without working, I can live comfortably. Surprised, I could imagine Jacob's shocked expression upon hearing the figure of $19 million. "Wait, is that true? You were that rich?" "It's true. If you don't believe me, you can confirm it with my parents." There was a moment of silence, followed by a voice mixed with astonishment and confusion. "Is that really true? Why didn't you tell me something so important?" "Because our relationship was becoming strained, and the discussions about the assets weren't solidified yet. I didn't find the right moment to say it." "Vic, damn it." Disappointment was evident in Jacob's voice. He probably never dreamed I'd have such a vast sum of money. I could clearly sense his regret. But I wanted to completely sever ties with him. "Have you finally understood? Make sure to pay the property division on time. And maybe reflect on your actions a bit. Let's make this the last time. Don't contact me anymore. Goodbye." Taking a deep breath, I set down my phone. Immediately, I added Jacob's number to the block list. This should prevent any more annoying calls from him. "Mom, Who was that call from? Emma, perhaps curious, hurried over. Just an acquaintance. But that doesn't matter. Hey, how about we go to the amusement park this weekend? Really? Faye, I can't wait. Seeing Emma's face light up, I silently sighed in relief. Her smile was the most precious thing to me. A while later, I heard from a friend that Jacob had divorced Meg. Constant quarrels arose due to Meg not doing house chores. And ultimately, Meg took the step to end things. It might be challenging for Jacob, with multiple divorces in such a short time. Consider marriage again. For the sake of preventing further pain for anyone else, I hope he remains single for a while. After divorcing Meg, it seems he also quit his job at the restaurant. He'll likely find a new job somewhere, but it may take time for him to bounce back. His life seemed to have taken a rapid downturn, and while I felt a tad sympathetic, it was a consequence of his own choices. To avoid contact with Jacob, I blocked his phone number and made a point to avoid places filled with our shared memories. As days passed, Jacob's presence in my life faded away like mist. Eventually, I received the property division from Jacob. He probably incurred significant debt. I'm unsure how he'll overcome his daily challenges, but deep down, I hope this catalyzes his reflection. I'm enjoying a peaceful life at my parents' home. My parents warmly welcomed my prolonged stay. My fractures are healing, and I've regained my energy. Starting a part-time job at a cute local flower shop. While I don't need to work financially, interacting with people outside felt more in tune with my nature. I work for most of the week and spend enjoyable moments with Emma and my parents during weekends. This tranquil everyday life holds immense value for me, making me appreciate life. I want to continue cherishing these warm moments with my loving family. Every time I see Emma smile, I genuinely feel the happiness of the present.